camera and back. You've come back, friends. Thank you for coming back. This is where it starts to get intense, because this is where we start to provide you with the content. And for a long time, well, actually every year at EDP, we try to have an awesome kickoff. We'll use the football, international football, soccer terms. The kickoff is super important. You know how, like, at the European Championships, they always have, like, Shakira come out and sing before the kickoff, because, you know, we're trying to signal to everybody that's a really big show here at the European Championships, or what have you. We've always done that here at the Executive Development Program. And for many years, we actually struggled a bit just to get the right kind of thinker lined up at the outset. And we finally achieved it with our good friend, Roger Snow. Roger Snow is now SVP of Cygames. He has also been an executive at Shuffle, at just about all of the folks in that family of companies that has been Cygames. And as all of you know, we have attendees of all stripes. We have people who run very small gaming operations. We have people who run very large gaming operations. We have people who are on the regulator side. We have people who run the technology firms that, of course, provide the games for everyone. And that's our topic at first. What if the ultimate crisis at an operations level happened? What if they stopped liking our games? And that's already happening to some degree. And by way of introduction, let me share with you the moment when we knew that Roger Snow was our leadoff forever. A couple of years back, Roger Snow was, like a lot of people, into Game of Thrones, which I know is a global phenomenon. I had not seen Game of Thrones, but it didn't matter when he opened with this. His metaphor was that the gaming industry is just like the Game of Thrones seasons, in a way that reflects the coming devastation that nobody is paying attention to. So if you didn't see Game of Thrones, that's totally okay. I didn't either, and I'll give you the synopsis. The first, I believe, like 6 seasons with all these different families fighting against each other, and there were these internecine battles where one family was backstabbing another, and the one backstabbing family was backstabbing a third family, and all these little families were constantly fighting. And that occupied 6 seasons or so. And the thing that Roger Snow observed was that this is kind of like the world of gaming. There's tons of sort of everyday small battles where, for example, IGT will win a games battle against Cygames, who will then turn around and beat Aristocrat for sales at a certain casino. And then maybe Konami will come in with a systems approach that will upend a number of systems that are in place elsewhere. Basically, all these little families, if you will do battle against one another. But meanwhile, nobody's paying attention to the looming games crisis, what we might call the end of games. And on the final season of Game of Thrones, if you saw this is probably something you can tell better than I. But the motto, or the sort of, the final season was marketed with the phrase, "Winter is coming." Because you see, while each of these families were doing battle against each other, there was this looming sort of uber power. I know we've got some Germans in the room, so use a little German there. The uber power, the uber powerful group of, like, winter beasts. If you've seen, of course, the promotions for this, you know what I'm talking about. Who was coming in with all the devastation on the planet that they inhabited and all the powerful forces in the world. And these were a force, they represented together a force that was both undefeatable by all of these small families, but also something they hadn't paid attention to at all. And here's what Roger Snow said. You know what that reminds me of? Us in the manufacturing and games world. We are all doing battle with one another. IGT fights Aristocrat, which fights Konami, which fights AGS, which fights Blueberry, and we have all of these little tiny battles. Meanwhile, we're not paying attention to the looming beast that's on the horizon. And here's what it is. Young people don't like our games. That's the big beast that can consume all of us. Young people don't like our games. Young people like games that they're playing on their phones. Young people like games that they're playing in far more immersive video game environments. And while for a long time we've been fine with that, we've said, well, people will age into our product. People will age into the casino environment or the Australian club environment or the European sort of smaller mid-sized casino environment when they get less sedentary, when their knees go, or in Jim's case, when his back gives out once and for all. They will want to sit down in our casinos and play. But Roger's point was, what if that isn't the case in the future? What are we doing about the end of games? So he made everybody sign, and I'm going to hand it over to Roger and conclude with this. He made everybody sign the Game of Thrones poster that promoted Winter is Coming. And then he went so far as to shrink it and send it out to every single attendee that year, who then in turn put it up in their offices to remind us all to pay attention to the end of games. And that is something that I can guarantee you every EDP attendee of that year still has on their wall. And the person I'm about to introduce to you also has it up on his wall. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you Senior Vice President of Cygames, Mr. Roger Snow. Welcome to the show, Roger. Do you still have that up on your wall, the autographed by every EDP attendee? I love that story, and I was just telling this crew, I know you had to jump on just a few minutes ago, that was the moment where we knew you were on our kickoff team. You were the leadoff batter. You were the one to go first because you think like nobody else. I love reading your thoughts in global gaming business, and I'm so thrilled you're getting to talk to these guys today.
So, first of all, like every other conference call, I have to ask, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear,
okay,
brother.
Perfect. Yeah,
Take
so
it away.
again, so luckily the theme that I'm going to talk about is crisis and opportunity. The theme was going to be punctuality, but I screwed that up by being 7.5 minutes late. So if anybody has ever had the fortune or misfortune, and I'm walking around my office, to be in a presentation that I give, it's really important. You guys can take this lesson right away. You make some kind of a point, but then people forget what you say. They completely forget what it is that you've said. So you have to give them a little reminder. So Bo's right. I guess if I can flip my phone around here, and I'll show you I have this on my wall.
There
that
it is.
That is The Winter is Coming. That's everyone's signature. Because once you sign your name on it, it no longer becomes a poster. It becomes an oath. And the point of this was, and I have it on, this is my office. I have it here. And I'm going to figure out how to flip it around. There we go. And once you have these little devices, and people will say, what does that mean? Why do you have that? And it is to remind you that it's a good idea every once in a while to get your head out of the sand and look around. Look at the bigger environment. We all get so caught up in the day-to-day. You're wearing your Monday hat, wearing your Tuesday hat. But you have to wear, as leaders, future leaders, you have to wear your 2021 hat, your 2025 hat. You have to look at the future, and that's the point of that. But it's funny, I have these things. I have another one I'm going to show you. I have a horse with a broken leg that talks about teamwork. The point of this story was, if a horse breaks its leg, you know what they do? They kill it. Same thing in business. But the nose works, the ears works, the tail works, the other 3 legs work, all the organs work, but a horse can't live with a broken leg. Same thing in companies. So whenever you do a presentation, it's not a bad idea to give something people to remember it by, and you're in luck because we're going to do that again, for better or for worse. So I'm going to talk very quickly about 3 things. We've got about 45 minutes or so, but I want to save time because I know there will be questions. The first question will be, why do you have those gigantic headphones on? That's all I could find lying around the house this morning when I was heading into the office. So I did ask everybody to have a piece of paper and some kind of writing instrument. So I hope you have that. And I want you to do me a favor. I want you to put your name on the top of that, and I'm going to do it with mine because this is going to hang in my office. So name, today's date, which I don't know what is today. I don't even know. It's 11.
It's the 16th?
16th. 2020. It is funny. Every time I write the date 2020, I remember at the beginning of the year, people were warning us about 2020. They said the problem is with 2020, make sure you just don't write 20. You have to write 2020 or something really bad will happen. Well, so much for that. A lot of bad stuff has happened. But that was supposed to be the worst thing about 2020, having to write the extra 2 and 0. Oops. Okay. So you're going to follow along with me. It's a little strange because I'm going to have to do it and then hold it up for you. So I want you to start by drawing. I'm going to start off simple by drawing that line, that one line straight down, and then we're going to cross our T like so. And then we're going to draw 2 lines like that. So far, so good. And then we're going to draw a little swoop like that. Doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be quick. And a little line across our swoop. And then this is the tricky part, the down and up move. So that, you can see that. Hold on. You got it? We are halfway done. Now on your page to the left of that, we're going to do a little, we're going to do that. And then a line across underneath it, and then a little angled line like that. And we are almost done. You can see that. And all we have left now is to make kind of a, it's like if an E and a C got together, they would create that. They would create that. So I assume everyone's done. Now, some of you may know where I'm going with this, and you also may know the postscript about this. But so it is said that in Chinese, and I'm sure you've heard this, that in the Chinese language, this is the symbol for danger. This is the symbol for crisis. Individually, danger, crisis. But when they are put together, as you have on your paper right now, what they mean is opportunity. So you may have heard this. John Kennedy back in the day said that the Chinese have the same word for crisis as they do for opportunity. Even on The Simpsons, Homer Simpson said the same thing. He called it crisatunity, if I recall. So this is, although technically, if you want to get technical about it, it's not true that crisis plus opportunity plus danger equals, opportunity plus crisis, danger plus opportunity equals crisis. It's not exactly true, but I want you to keep this in your office to remind you of something, that whenever there is crisis, whenever there is opportunity, and the bigger the crisis, the bigger the opportunity. It is a stone cold fact of human nature. So keep this in your office. I'm going to put mine in my office as well, next to my Winter is Coming. And whenever I look at that, I'm going to think crisis means opportunity. Because the easy thing to do is what 99% of the people did this. Think about it. You don't have that far back to recall. Back in February and March, when the whole world was collapsing, everybody was out there pointing out the problem of what's going to happen. Oh my God, this is terrible. This is awful. The sky is falling. What am I going to do? My job, my livelihood, my God. Anybody can see the problem. That's easy. Anybody can identify the crisis. But only a very small percentage of people can look through the crisis and see the opportunity. That is a key. And the reason you go to EDP, the reason you are torturing yourself over the next couple of weeks to do this, because I know it's a very hard program. The reason you're doing this is you don't want to be in that 99%. You don't want to be the person that can sit there and tell you 20 things about the crisis. You want to be the person that can find the one thing inside that crisis that makes opportunity. So you don't have to look back very far to see this in action. And in many ways, the crisis is still going on. And you know who does this very well? These Wall Street guys, these quants, these guys who can look and see, even when the market was bleeding, they were in there buying stocks because they saw the recovery. They didn't get caught up in wallowing in the crisis itself. Do not wallow in the crisis. And there will always be another crisis. Crises are like subway trains. There's going to be another one coming along soon enough. When it happens, as it's happening right now, and I know I'm belaboring the point, but I'm doing it for a reason. Find the opportunity. It's like the mentality of a fireman or firewoman. The building is burning down. Everyone's running out. What are they doing? They're running in. That is the way that they are trained. Train yourself the same way in business. This entire fortnight that you guys are going through is all about training yourselves to think differently and act differently than the other folks out there. And there's no better platform in the industry than EDP to do this. So this is the main point. Put this up in your office. Actually, mine didn't come out too bad. I've done it. I've practiced a few times. Put it in your office to just remind yourself whenever something goes wrong, what is the opportunity? So there are three things we're going to talk about today. That is the first. The second is I'm going to tell you a little story. I'm going to tell you a little story, the story of a man named Skinny Jack. And the story takes place coincidentally enough, in Lake Tahoe, which is why it's fun to tell the stories up there because you can have people look out the window. And if you've ever been to Lake Tahoe, you're seeing pictures, it's just covered with trees, forest as far as the eye can see. But back in the day, about 130, 140 years ago, you had these groups of lumberjack crews that would come through. They would clear part of the forest out to make way for a trail, which would eventually become a road, which would eventually become a highway. So this happened in the late 1800s as they were clearing out this road through Lake Tahoe in California and coming into in Nevada. These two lumberjack crews showed up at the same place at the same time. One came from the Pacific Northwest and the other one came from the Midwest, and they kind of just met in the middle, and they both wanted the same thing. They both wanted to get the job of clearing out this part of Lake Tahoe to make way for the road. And they were going to fight about it. They literally could have come to blows. There was a bunch of guys, a bunch of testosterone, and they had a bunch of axes. So things could have gone horribly wrong, but they decided to let cooler heads prevail. And they said, you know what? Here's how we're going to settle our dispute. Each team will appoint one member, and we've got about 8 hours until sundown. Whichever guy chops down the most trees between now and sundown, his team will win the concession and be able to clear the road, get the money, and have a good time. So the team from the Pacific Northwest, they picked out this guy. I mean, just this muscle-bound guy, 6.5 feet tall. His name is Big Jack. Big Jack was a monster. He was like the Paul Bunyan of lumberjacks. He had this giant axe, and most guys couldn't even pick it up. And this guy wielded this thing like a fencer does. The Midwest team nominated a guy named Skinny Jack. And this guy had pipe cleaners for arms, real skinny, kind of old. It looked like a strong breeze would blow this guy over. So they went to battle. Okay, they started it, and the competition began. Whoever chopped down more trees, his team would get the concession. And it started off, and everyone was laughing. All the guys from the Pacific Northwest, they were laughing. Oh my God! And actually, in a true, the Big Jack let Skinny Jack go first, and it took him 5 minutes to chop down a tree. Big Jack looked at him, took one swipe, and knocked the tree over. So the rout was on. This was going to be a joke. And as the time went on, Big Jack knocked down tree after tree after tree, and Skinny Jack was falling further and further and further behind. And to make it worse, every hour, without fail, Skinny Jack would go take a break. He went behind some bushes, behind some rocks, and he was doing something back there, and he would come back out. So not only is he chopping down fewer trees, he's taking what appears to be a siesta every hour. The competition goes on and on. The sun gets higher in the sky, and it's an absolute blowout. And again, every hour, without fail, Skinny Jack goes behind the trees, behind the bushes, behind the rocks, takes 5 minutes, and then comes back. As the sun starts to descend towards the Sierra Nevadas in the distance, the mountain range, a funny thing happens. Big Jack is not knocking over as many trees as he had been. It used to take him 4 or 5 whacks to knock a tree over. Now it's taking 30 or 40. They're now going into a higher elevation. The trees are different, and his technique, the same thing, is not working. He is trying just as hard. He's swinging just as hard, but he's not getting the same results. Meanwhile, Skinny Jack is making slow, steady progress. So as the sun gets closer and closer, as the competition gets closer and closer to ending, Skinny Jack relentlessly closes in on that lead. And just before the sun dips behind the mountains, Skinny Jack goes in front. And the guys from the Pacific Northwest, they can't believe it. And to add injury to insult, in his final swing, Big Jack, he's exhausted. His big muscles are exhausted. He takes a swipe at a tree, and it doesn't cut into the tree at all. It actually bounces back, hits him in the head, knocks him out. The Midwest team, Skinny Jack, they win. So the guys from the Midwest, they're all hoisting Skinny Jack on their shoulders. They're running around. They're happy. The guys from the Pacific Northwest can't believe it. How did they possibly lose? And amidst all this celebration and chaos, one guy from the Pacific Northwest, he decides, I'm going to take a look behind those bushes, those trees, that rock. What was going on back there? And he went back there, and you know what he saw? He saw a sharpening tool. A sharpening tool. Skinny Jack, every hour without fail, sharpened his axe. That was the key. He wasn't stronger. He wasn't bigger. He didn't work any harder, but he kept his axe sharp. Big Jack did not. He had every physical advantage you could possibly imagine. Every single one. He was stronger. He was more determined. He was aggressive. He had everything he could. He had a bigger axe with a bigger head on it. Didn't matter. He never stopped to sharpen his blade. That's why Skinny Jack won. So obviously this story is allegorical, because when you've been around as long as I have, you see things, you learn things. And by the way, stories are always good to tell you, because you'll remember this. You'll remember the image of Skinny Jack being hoisted on the shoulders of the Midwest team and being carried off to victory. So stories really matter when you're trying to make a point. And you are right now experiencing the single best blade sharpening tool in the industry, EDP. That is what you're doing. There are most people aren't there. They're having fun, they're watching TV, they're going to work, they're not sharpening their blades. And that's the key. This is a very long, I've been at this for 23 years. This is a very long game. I've seen people, they went to better schools than I did. They're smarter than I am. They probably work harder than I do. But a lot of them aren't around because they never bothered to sharpen their blade. They are in 2020 with their 1996 skill set, and they never bothered to do anything. And there's no excuse. Not everyone can go to EDP. I get it. You have to be chosen by your company to get to go, or you have to pay your way in. It is a privilege and an honor to be there. So not everyone has this opportunity. Everybody can sharpen his or her blade. It's so easy now. You've got at your phone, you've got the world at your fingertips. What do you want to learn about? Public speaking? Oh, you can learn about that. Business finance? Okay, how to raise equity? How to product development? There are TED Talks, and you see Bose is very good, by the way. Bose TED Talk. You can see TED Talks. You can learn so much. If you are in 2020 with a dull blade, it is your fault. And you might get away with it for a while. You might make it through 2020 or 2021, but eventually there's a Skinny Jack out there sharpening his or her blade every single day. And eventually that person's going to cut you down. So again, I have seen it over the years, and it is the one immutable fact of business is that everything changes. Just like in the story, when they went from different trees, Big Jack's technique no longer worked. But Skinny Jack adjusted his technique. He had a sharp blade, and he knocked those trees down one after the other. That is a critical message of this. So, and not once EDP is done, one of the best things about EDP is that it is essentially, it's like the Marines. It's a fraternity. It's a brotherhood and a sisterhood of people. And you're now going to be sharpening your sword and your axe and your blade with people who are also doing it. So that just has a compounding effect, which is why the alumni list of EDP, and I'm not sure if you've met Todd Haushalter yet or you're about to, who's an EDP alum. That's why guys like this have done so well. And that's a guy who's always keeping his sword and his blade sharp. So that's the second message. The first message was that when you're faced with a crisis, you find the opportunity. The second message is to do so, you have to keep your sword sharp. Read, go on the internet, look at videos, talk to smart people, subscribe to Business Week or Forbes, anything, more information, the better. Look outside your industry. It's funny. There's something I've always wanted to do. It's one of the, I don't have the nerve to do this yet, but I'd love to. About a year and a half ago, back when they had conventions, I was at a hotel in Palm Springs, getting ready to goof off and play golf. The hotel I was staying at had a medical conference, and I so badly wanted to go into that medical conference because they get the badges out front, and no one's policing that stuff. I was going to grab someone's badge and just walk in and listen. And that's a kind of would be a fun thing to do, to look from other industries. A lot of what I've seen, and we talked about the issue with young people not playing games, a lot of what I see and learn comes from other industries. It's not about being smart. It's about being observant and having the humility to accept the fact you don't know it all. Somebody else knows more, and you can learn from all these people. So that's the second lesson. The third lesson is the complete flip side of the first lesson. The first lesson was, when faced with crisis, look for the opportunity. What's the flip side of that? When facing opportunity, look for the crisis. And this is the hardest thing you're going to do in business. The hardest thing. If you're lucky enough, and listen, to be honest, a lot of us were in gaming. If you are like me and you get into the gaming industry in 1997, you couldn't help but do well. There were casinos everywhere. Everyone needed slot machines, table games, card shufflers, and all the ancillary products that go with it. If you were involved back then in the industry, or running a casino back in the late 90s, early 2000s, are the doors unlocked? Yep. Are the dealers awake? Yep. Are the slot machines plugged in? Yep. Get out of the way. That's what it was. But trees, this is the old metaphor, trees do not grow to the sky. Trees do not grow to the sky. And it is so hard when things are going well to try to find the crisis inside of all the abundance, all the opportunity. And over the years, most companies struggle with this. And I'll give you some examples. Maybe you know these. So I'm old enough to remember when Blockbuster Video had a brick and mortar shop on every street corner. That's what it was. You wanted to rent a video, you'd buy it from Blockbuster. And Blockbuster was really in the real estate business, in the amalgamation business. They would buy up all the mom and pops that were out there. So it's Bo's Video, boom, they buy that. It's Jim's Video Store, they buy that. Catherine's Video, they buy that. They had everything. No matter where you went, Blockbuster, Blockbuster, Blockbuster. And they were bathing themselves in this massive opportunity and massive expansion. But guess what they never saw coming? Streaming. Netflix, Hulu, Vudu, never saw it coming. Amazon, they never saw it coming. Never. And the story goes, and I believe this to be true, it may be slightly embellished, but that's okay. It's good to remember it. The story goes that the Blockbuster execs back in the day had an off-site meeting, as companies always do. Those are great boondoggles, by the way. Have fun, play golf, eat, and pat yourself on the back for a couple of days. Those are fun. And the story goes that at this off-site meeting, a junior executive at Blockbuster said, "Hey, have you seen this this Netflix streaming service? People can now get their videos right to their phone, right to their tablet, right to their television or laptop." And the response from one of the senior executives was just dismissive. You know what? People like going in. They like having the cartridge in their hand. They enjoy the experience of coming into our facility and picking out a video. It sounds absurd. Actually, as I'm saying it, I'm balking because it sounds so ridiculous, but that's what they convinced themselves. By the way, so did the newspaper industry, which is where I come from. I'm a journalist from back in the day. People like having that paper in their hand. Yeah, nothing better than having to get ink stains off your fingers all day. So Blockbuster convinced itself that it was right. It did not see the crisis inside the opportunity. All they could see was buying out more video shops. Then, and very quickly, it unraveled very quickly. It didn't take long for Blockbuster to go from behemoth to bankrupt, which is what happened. And this is why in your careers, and I just heed this message. When things are going well, think about what can go wrong. So I mentioned Amazon. You know who should be Amazon? As a company, I don't even know if you've even heard of this company. Sears Roebuck should be Amazon. Sears Roebuck, 30, 40 years ago, was the biggest retailer in the world. They were the darling of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. They were a monster. Again, they had a business model out of the 1950s, but it worked in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and even into the 80s. It worked very well. You could buy car parts there, you have your car service there, clothes, small appliances, large appliances, lawn mowers, pretty much everything you can imagine. And what they had, everyone knew the Sears catalog. The Sears catalog would come out 4 or 5 times a year. Maybe there's a Christmas edition as well. And you could go on and count, I want to buy a beach umbrella. And call up, hey, I want to buy a beach umbrella. Send me a model number. Great. And it would come to your house. Yeah, that's Amazon. How do they not take that massive advantage and turn it into an online monster like Amazon? It's incredible to me. But the reason why is simple. And I'll explain it in a second. It's the same reason why Honda or Toyota or General Motors didn't become Tesla. It's the same reason why the New York Taxi Authority did not become Uber. The reason is, for all of these businesses, and it's going to happen over and over and over and over and over again, it is nearly impossible to disrupt yourself. Nearly impossible. I'm the same way. I make games for a living. It is hard for me to get outside the paradigm of a player versus dealer game, table game with cards, with chips. It's hard for me to get outside of that. You have to really discipline yourself to think differently. It's an easy motto, think differently. It's very hard to do. So if you're a car executive at Nissan, for example, you're not thinking about an electric car. You're thinking about, maybe I should get into the SUV market. You know what? Maybe I should have a sports car. What about a convertible version of that car? How can I combine my manufacturing facilities? How can I decrease my shipping costs? How can I increase my dealer markup? That's what you're focused on. You're focused on the exact same business model and improving it slightly every year. That's it. And whether you're at Nissan or Scientific Games or IGT or you're at a casino operator, that's kind of what you think. It's the old expression, you drink your own bathwater, which is really disgusting, but it also doesn't help. It takes an outside company to disrupt you. And that's what happened to Sears. First of all, Walmart beat Sears up, and then Amazon came in and just shot it in the head and put it out of its misery. That's what happened. The same thing happened with Blockbuster, with Netflix, and it's going to happen over and over and over again. I mean, how is Tesla, a Silicon Valley startup, 15, 20 years ago, whatever it is, how is it the most valuable car company in the world? It's truly remarkable because they changed I'm an owner of one of their cars. It changes the experience of driving completely. So to recap, we'll get into the questions now. Hopefully there are some. The first lesson really is, when you're faced with a crisis, coronavirus, global meltdown, 9/11, dot-com bust, changing demographics, what is the opportunity? Secondly, the tale, remember the story of Skinny Jack. Sharpen your blade constantly, religiously. Do not let weeks go by without learning something new. The sharper your blade, the better you will do in your career. Hey, we're all selfish. In a way, we're all kind of in it for ourselves. The best piece of advice that you can get is to self-improve, sharpen your blade. And the third lesson, and this is tough, this is probably the toughest one of all. When things are going great, think about what could go wrong. What could disrupt us? What could knock us off our perch and on our ass? It happened to Blockbuster. It happened to Sears. It's going to happen to a lot of other companies going forward. So those are the 3 lessons that I want to leave you with. And again, you do have, please, I know it might be silly, and I don't mind being a little silly sometimes. Keep this around to remind you that inside crisis is opportunity, and inside opportunity is crisis. So with that, I'll flip it back over to Bo to see if anybody has any comments or questions.
Awesome. I'm air applauding you, Roger. What a great way to launch conversations on crises. I love that in every opportunity there's a crisis. In every crisis there's an opportunity. And I actually have a question that I think I asked you at one EDP before. What folks won't know about you is that within Cygames, you are well known, and now it's obvious to all why, for your public speaking. And you started to, per request of the leadership there, teach a public speaking course, which soon became global. This isn't substantive or pertaining to Crisis, but if you had a piece of public speaking advice to give to these future CEO types who are watching you here today, what would it be? You're so damn good at it, man. What's your secret?
Taking it. Body language. I'm not kidding. It's the old saying that it's body language. When you see, and you've seen this, and you can all, I want you to imagine right now, all of you out there, someone who's really bad at public speaking. And it's a skill like anything else. It's a skill. It can be learned. So the one thing they all have in common, the bad public speakers, is they have no confidence. They look down. They can't make eye contact. They move around when they talk. If these are all subliminal hints to the audience, I'm not comfortable with what I'm saying. You don't have to be the most eloquent speaker in the world. You don't have to have that booming like Steve Wynn or James Earl Jones type voice. You don't need that. You need to have good body language, and by body language projects confidence. Don't move around a lot. And I remember when I saw your TED Talk, I think I asked you, did they like put a marker down so you wouldn't move? And I believe you said, yes, they did.
They did. Yeah, they made me stand a little red dot.
Right. Don't move.
Don't move.
Stand still. You can make eye contact. You can pivot your upper body, but do not shuffle around. Like I'm doing it right now. Imagine if I was talking like this. It's really distracting. So that's the number one. I'll give you a couple, but the number one is your body language. Number two is you have to change the inflection of your voice sometimes. Sometimes you talk low, high. Don't have to have a perfect voice. Can't be monotone. And third, please, PowerPoint has destroyed a generation of public speakers. I always imagine Martin Luther King standing there on the Washington Monument. I have a dream. Next slide, please. I mean, it's absurd. 4 score and slide, please. 7 years. It's insanity. There's something you don't have to be perfect. You don't. You just have to be genuine. If you're funny, be funny. If you're not funny, don't try to be funny. Just be who you are and make that emotional connection with the audience.
That's awesome. And speaking of audience, we would love for the audience to provide questions in the Q&A, and Jim will be moderating those. I want to ask the question that shifts us into our next session. So we are going on a little field trip, just like when we were back in the school days, to go see Todd Haushalter, EDP grad. And I remember at one point you saying the first time you saw Evolution Games, it scared the crap out of you. Only I think you said shit. When you said that, it was very poignant to me because you're somebody who's been looking at games your whole life. And one of the crises, as we pointed out in the Game of Thrones analogy, was the crisis of the future of games. What if they stop liking our games? Talk a little bit about what they're going to see. And I know you're good frenemies, a competitor, but also a friend of Todd's. Tell us what they're going to see in terms of a possible solution to the crisis of the ends of games.
Well, it's funny. I'll take a step back for a second. Not only did Evolution's what their game platform scared the shit out of me. When I met Todd Haushalter, he scared the shit out of me too, because you feel pretty confident with yourself. You're smart. You feel like a smart guy. Then you meet him and it's like, holy smokes, I got to be on my A game when I'm talking to this guy. But that's another lesson here. Listen, try to hang out with people that are super sharp. Don't hang out with a bunch of dopes because you're not going to learn anything from them. So a guy like Todd, when I met him, I got the phone with him when he called me up. I think he was working at the Wynn. He called me up to ask me for advice. I'm going, damn, this kid's going places. He's super sharp. And I worked with him for a while. And when he and I were sharpening our swords together, that sounds bad, but we were at Shuffle Master, we really were. So that's another lesson. Hang out with people that are really bright. So Evolution Games, and it's a funny story how business, life, love can turn war on a single moment. Shuffle Master in 2013 was going to buy Evolution Games. At the time, it was a relatively small company, maybe worth a couple of $100 million. And because Bally bought Shuffle Master didn't buy Evolution, and now Evolution could probably buy all of us. I mean, they're such a monster. But what Evolution does, and what you're going to see this is, they completely reimagine, and I hate that expression, everyone's using it. We should reimagine reimagining. It drives me crazy. But they looked at how table games were done because they were operating for a long time standard fare table games, roulette, blackjack, etc. But they said, you know what? We're going to try something crazy here. And ask Todd to tell you about the Dreamcatcher story because it looks good in hindsight, but I know he was sweating bullets that game was going to fail. So they took a chance, and that's part of innovating and part of being leaders. Listen, you got to you might look stupid. Evolution would have looked ridiculous if Dreamcatcher had failed. You're going to invest money in a big 6-wheel product? Are you out of your mind? But they revolutionized the industry. And with that taste of success, it led to Lightning Roulette. It led to Crazy Time, which is my favorite game of theirs. And what they did is this, very briefly, and you'll see it, is they simply made games more fun. If you play an Evolution game, it's like you're a contestant on a game show. And who doesn't want to be a contestant on a game show? That was my dream as a child, still unfulfilled, to be a contestant on a game show. They just make it so much fun. And they look at everything and how can I make it better?
Well said. And again, what a poignant thing that Todd Haushalter was a student in your EDP class just a few years back. And now look at the guy. He's flying. Hey, so Jim, are you there?
I'm here, Bo.
Are you armed with questions? Do we have any questions from the audience?
We do. Our friend Sarah Elliott would like to know what crises may we face in gaming in the next few years?
Ooh.
Well, first of all, questions are $10 each, so make sure Sarah gets charged, and you can just send it. You can just Venmo the money.
Same Venmo? Yeah, okay, no problem, Roger.
Yeah, same Venmo. Well, I mean, you're seeing what the online space. Sorry, what's happening in the brick and mortar space. Although it's funny, this crisis, it's a crisis in Las Vegas, but these California casinos, these regional casinos, are doing very well for themselves. And the lesson of this is, so if she becomes a leader someday of a company, or works on a leadership team, the real lesson I'm getting from this is you have to be diversified. So Scientific Games is a big company, and the casino business has been kicked in the stomach about as hard as possible. But guess what? Our lottery division, doing better than ever. Online games, better than ever. Sports betting, social gaming, doing better than ever. If Scientific Games, if the leadership had just made it a casino company, it would have been much more vulnerable to a crisis. But a lot of it is done. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Same thing. Make yourself somewhat bulletproof of a crisis by diversifying. Do not be a one-trick pony. And if you're in the casino space as an operator or supplier, and you're not in the online world, then listen, I can't help you. You are ready and prime for a beatdown.
Yeah, be diversified. Have more than one peg in the stool, right? Because when one collapses, you've got others to still hold you up. When you think about the last Great Recession, and I think Alan Feldman's out there, I don't know that MGM exists if Macau doesn't exist. Because MGM wouldn't have survived the Great Recession without the revenues coming in from the other side of the planet in the form of Macau. There were a lot of people here in Las Vegas that, oh, gosh, MGM's going to Macau. That's bad news for Las Vegas. We literally wouldn't have Las Vegas's biggest company without that kind of diversification you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's not just MGM. And again, I don't know what their balance sheet was at the time, but Wynn had its property in Macau. Las Vegas Sands not only had Macau, but also had Singapore. And that certainly helped. If you've been to that property, and if you spend time with Andrew McDonald, who I think is also an EDP alum, am I right?
He is an EDP alum.
Yeah, so Singapore and Macau and a lot, I mean, really, I'm not trying to make a judgment on their balance sheet. I don't know what their situation was, but it was certainly a benefit to have properties in that side of the world. So you're geographically diversified. You're product diversified. You're doing things online, for example. That's the key. So what the next crisis is, I kind of ducked Sarah's question. What the next crisis is going to be, I don't know. That's the thing about crises. They don't announce themselves ahead of time. But I do think we face the overall crisis that our players are getting older in the brick and mortar space. Our players are essentially dying every day. And you don't want to end up, with all due respect to the Keno lounges. When I first started, every major casino in Las Vegas had a Keno lounge. Now, you couldn't find one with a compass and a roadmap. You'd never find one. So you don't want to be like that. You need to attract younger players and look elsewhere. There's a company out of Los Angeles, Two Bit Circus, and they have it's like a Dave and Buster's, but really for adults. And they seem to have kind of found a bit of the formula of what it's going to take to attract younger people. And casinos have done this. You see a lot more bars, nightclubs, high-end restaurants. That's where a lot of it has tilted in response to what the market wants. The market's always going to win. You're the one that's going to lose if you don't serve them.
Well said. Jim, any other questions from the audience?
We have several questions.
Wow.
Okay,
Go nuts,
I'll be
Jim.
more brief. Sorry. Normally, I'd like to filibuster to fill up the time, but I'll be brief now.
We appreciate that. Claudio would like to know, what can we do to conquer young clients' demands? Are you convinced they will not come when they get older?
Well, I can only speak my personal experiences. I couldn't wait till I turned 21 to go to a casino and make some bets. I am not sure what is going to happen with young people. A lot of things. If you ever studied like evolutionary or biology, a lot of it is experimentation in the forms of like mutation, and then what adapts and what doesn't. The same thing has to happen here. Like, I'm shocked, and I work for one of the biggest slot machine companies in the world. I'm shocked I've never seen a slot machine themed after like Electric Daisy Carnival or Coachella or something that skews younger, or League of Legends or something. And it may sound crazy, but I think that someone needs to make some attempts. And there are some guys out there. Is it Gameco? They're doing those skill-based games. That you need more and more experimentation from both the supplier side, and the operators have to be willing to try it as well. Because otherwise, the customer, the 27-year-old that you're coveting, isn't going to come up to you and say, "Hey, I want this, 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 and this." They don't know what they want. They don't know what they want. It's like the old Henry Ford line. If I did what my customers asked for, I would have made they would have had a faster horse. They don't know what they need. You have to try different things and experiment and see what works. But the problem with this crisis, just like when Bro was talking about the Game of Thrones, the problem with the crisis is the same. It's taking too long to get here. A big crisis like coronavirus, everyone sees it and feels it immediately. This larger crisis, which is existential, it's taking so long to get here that a lot of us will be retired by the time it comes. But you won't be. You need to solve it.
It's on you. No pressure, EDP attendees. What else we got, Jim?
Our friend Jeff asks, with the stay-at-home orders throughout the world in effect, do you foresee more at-home virtual reality gaming options in the future? And also, what are your thoughts on Robinhood? And do you even envision a gaming company getting into this realm?
Is Robinhood the financial app? I'm not exactly positive what Robinhood is.
I'm going to ask Jeff to unmute and tell us, because I don't know.
Hello, Jeff.
Hey, how you doing, Roger? Yes, it's the Wall Street app that was recently released.
You buy like fractions of a stock price. Is that what that is?
Yeah, this kind of where they're taking out the middle person, and they're able to buy directly from. And it seemed like when the stimulus package came out, a lot of the younger folks were just, instead of going to gaming, they were doing this instead. So it's kind of like a spin-off of gaming, some aspect.
Well, it's the first part of your question. Well, if my 14-year-old son is any indication, that people will never leave their rooms again. They're going to stay in there all day. They're going to come out to eat and go to the bathroom, and that's about it. So there will be long-standing changes from this. A lot of stuff will snap back, I do believe, but there will be things that change. And Robinhood, as far as I know, is a financial app where you can buy, with a small amount of money, you can get into the stock market. And I'm not saying that the stock market is gambling, but it is action. And that's the one thing that won't go away. And it's funny, I don't know if you ever saw in Todd Househalter's presentation he did, I think it was at last year's EDP, when he talked about, what's going to happen in 50 years, 60 years. He said, I think it's like, basically, I don't know, but people are always going to want to gamble, whether it's in the stock market, whether it's in marriages, whether it's in casinos, online, sports betting. They're going to want to do something. And the theme here really is, I can't predict, no one can predict the future. Everyone gets lucky once in a while. But the one thing I can tell you is you need to be prepared for whatever happens by diversifying your company and your own self and your own skill set.
Well said. What else we got, Jim?
Our friend Cameron West asks, how has Cygames been affected by COVID, and how did your team respond? And then he has an unrelated second question, which is, do you think esports will play a large role in the future of gaming?
Second question first, yes. I'm not an esports guy. My son loves League of Legends, and I've had a few conversations with the folks down there. I think they're in Santa Monica. I know they're in Los Angeles, but just outside of Los Angeles, I think it's Santa Monica. They'll have more people watching their League of Legends finals than we'll have watching the 7th game of the World Series, and it's shocking to see that. It's truly shocking. Now that's funny. They have sort of the opposite problem that gaming has. They lose players as they get older. They lose them. The average League of Legends player is probably 16 or 15 years old. Once he or she graduates college and moves on to the real world, they tend to drift away. So it's funny. We came together because we have sort of compatible problems. So I think the ability to bet on these games and talk about the data that you'll have to set a betting line on a game. Once that gets in, I think esports will really take off because everything, as we know, is more fun if you bet on it. And what was the first question? Oh, Cygames. What's changed at Cygames? Everything. I mean, if I can turn my phone around, I'm in the office and there's like 4 people here. We have this gigantic building. And I'm here primarily for this phone call. Everyone pretty much works from home outside of manufacturing and service. We work from home. The lesson we've learned is that efficiency didn't necessarily drop off by people working at home. People are still focused. People are still getting the work done. And I think that's a long-standing trend out of this. You won't see these I'd hate to be in the commercial real estate business right now because you don't need these gigantic buildings anymore. These collective gathering places for what? For what? You can get as much done at home.
Yeah, what a lesson of 2020. I think we have time for 1 or 2 more, Jim.
It looks like we have answered all the questions in the chat.
Wow.
Woohoo!
You've exhausted the crew, the audience here, Roger. Well, as always, we are headed off to hopefully a solution to these crises you've introduced by getting to immerse ourselves in Evolution games. But what a great job of laying out the landscape here at the outset. Thank you for being the ultimate kickoff faculty member at EDP, as always, my friend. Good to see you, and looking forward to hopefully doing this next year in Lake Tahoe with you.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Roger.
Have fun in your field trip.
Hold hands. Stay together.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So we will be reconvening at 11:45 Lake Tahoe time. So that's about 20 minutes from now. And we will look forward to seeing you all then. And we will get to meet Todd Haushalter, and he will guide us through our what was once a poker tournament when we were up in the mountains, but now is something far, far bigger. So stay tuned, and we'll see you real soon.